Do we really want to tell ourselves the truth in this country? Because the things that are happening, like I'll be discussing about today, are very concerning. And this has to do with the story of Sunday Jackson. Now, the point of which I was reading this news on Nigerian law was quite interesting because it says here, let me read it at this point so we can see it together. Jackson supporters argue that the case should never have gone to trial as it was clear instance of self-defense. We are going to be discussing about this, looking at the whole Fulani situation and what has been happening, especially northern part of Nigeria, also in the southeast as well. At most, they contend a charge of manslaughter would have been appropriate. Instead, Jackson has spent over a decade in prison, including 6 years awaiting trial for a case that involved only 5 court sittings. His prolonged incarceration and the subsequent death sentence have been described as gross travesty of justice. And we are going to be discussing about this trend today because, first of all, I'm a Christian myself. And with what is happening, it is very concerning. Now, the people you see right here, the pastor, who is also a human rights, activist as well, and then the lawyer here represented. We are going to be watching the news on Arise News because this was where I saw the original conversation happening, and I had to maybe kind of like dig further to what is really going on, because most time as well, I will tell you one thing for a fact. Each time we talk about things happening in Nigeria and try to have a conversation about it, at least to raise awareness, people really seem not to care, except for those who are actually involved, or would I say internally experiencing the situation. Now, for someone who is a pastor to be coming outside to be discussing about what is happening inside Nigeria with respect to this whole Sunday Jackson situation, I think is really, really concerning. The best I can do is just to amplify the news and we all get to add our voice as well and see how this can be resolved. Now, for those who will not watch this video to the end, the whole goal of this, me talking about this, is that there is a way that Sunday Jackson, even though he's being sentenced to death, can actually be free if you are looking at the surrounding case or instance of this particular case critically. And that is if clemency, of course, is gotten from the governor of the state in Adamawa. Very important. So if there's any conversation, of course, happening on the internet and trying to bring attention, like I always start us as well here, attention is currency, then to a great extent, I think if more attention is brought onto this, it can be more global that indeed the governor has to do something. Just like how we had the governor of Osun State having to come into someone that was sentenced because of chicken. Some of you saw the story. Let's listen to the full context of this as we get to go on.
But Sunday Jackson, a former student in his early 30s, is facing death by hanging after Nigeria's Supreme Court today upheld the judgment of a lower court in Adamawa State.
When they say he's in his early 30s, I'm now wondering because the timeline is quite interesting. That means how old was he when the situation happened if he's in his early 30s now? Because if he has been held in prison for over a decade, at least from where I read it from, a decade is 10 years, then it's something really, really interesting to look at. Let's look at the full context.
Mr. Jackson was a student turned farmer who says he was violently attacked on his farm in Kodomti Forest in the Newman local government area in Adamawa State by a Fulani herdsman known as Buba Bawuro.
Note Fulani herdsmen. Sometimes Nigerians use the term bandits, but still the same people. And I'll play a video for you that would actually open your eyes to something I think is quite important to note.
Wait, so did you know that 95% of the Fulanis that you are seeing in your village, we always used to pay your traditional rulers before we landed into your village? But some of you guys don't know anything about it. But seriously, any Fulani that you can see in your village, or any Fulani that can spend like 1 to 3 or 5 months in your village, I see it to go, they used to pay your traditional rulers. So we used to pay them money before they would allow us to stay like 1 to 3 months in their places. But if like we just pass, they will not collect them. But if we will come and spend like 3 to 4 months, we must pay them. So I know some of you guys don't know about it. So we used to pay your traditional rulers serious about. I know I see so many people are saying we are going around with in the bushes that we did not own, which I say we used to pay for it. Ask your traditional rulers. I swear we used to pay them. If we will spend like 1 to 2 to 3 months, we'll go and find them. We'll give them money, they'll collect. Before we will stay. So stop saying we are going around with our cows in your bushes and we're not giving you guys anything, which it is wrong. We are praying, I swear.
Those four will interest them. Maybe God will give us grace. One day I want to say, surely, and my mother, please, I want to beg everybody. Look when I come out iPhone, Nama. Look when I come out iPhone, Naira. The one that use my make man and say, you know this children. So I don't see how many number of Nama. When FULANI will carry come here where to satisfy with all of them. You know, no thing. I take God better. The first step is to remove her eye from everything where FULANI they bring as homemade, as whatever for community development. One have washed my hand from this side. If we start from there, there will be a way out. But if we don't start from there, we are very sorry for what will happen tomorrow. Thank you very much, sir.
The herdsman had strayed into Mr. Jackson's farm with his animals, and after Mr. Jackson challenged him, he apparently pulled a knife and a fight ensued. He stabbed Mr. Jackson a couple of times, but he managed to retrieve the knife and to stab his attacker in the neck, whereupon he died. Mr. Jackson was arrested and charged with murder. He's consistently argued that it was self-defense. In 2021, he was found guilty by a court in Yola and condemned to death by hanging. And today, the Supreme Court in Abuja upheld that judgment. So he's now in a race for his life, and the only option left is to appeal for clemency from the governor of Adamawa State. So what hope does he now have of a reprieve? Well, for more on this case, I'm joined now in the studio by a member of his defense team, the US-based human rights lawyer, Emmanuel Ogebe, and by Dr. William Terence Devlin, an American human rights leader who has been supporting Mr. Jackson. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Let me start with you.
It's just interesting, I would say. Now, I know some of you heard the news. I didn't talk about it because it's still a bit sketchy, and I was waiting for the Nigerian government to formally respond to that. With the whole Trump investigation and, probing of their system, USAID, it was uncovered, or would I say revealed, that USAID's operation in Nigeria, to a great extent, has financed Boko Haram. Now, putting Fulani herdsmen and Boko Haram in the same context is still insurgency in a way, I would say. Okay, but looking at this, of course, critically, Nigeria becoming a place for such unrest profits some people to a great extent. And we are going to be looking at some news as well with respect to that. These are things that are happening in the country that even the security personnel themselves know.
We can say now banditry is an industry in Zamfara State. Last month, we arrested a member of the State House of Assembly in banditry here in Zamfara State. We arrested a district head we also as well arrested a former local government chairman. So you can see that involvement of this class of people in banditry is more making the situation to become more and more complex. So, in essence, I can say that all caliber of people now are involved. All manner of people are involved in this banditry. More alarming and more disturbing is the involvement of a district head in supplying drugs to the bandits.
And for these people themselves to operate wherever they operate in the country, whether they are Fulani herdsmen, the ones that have gone rogue, not as if all of them are like that, they have some form of influence, or would I say assistance, coming from even those who are indigenous of those communities that these things happen. Now you see what I'm talking about. But let's listen to what they also have to say here at Arise News.
Emmanuel, just briefly give us the background to this case and what led to Sunday Jackson ending up on death row.
Yes, so this is really a sad day, I think, for Nigerians and their rights to self-defense. Nigerians already have to provide their own security, electricity, infrastructure, and now they can't even defend themselves without being sentenced to death. And I think all of us should be very alarmed by this very unfortunate precedent.
All of us.
In February of 2021, we read in the news about Jackson's death sentence just as we're coming into Nigeria. So we flew to Yola and I met with his counsel. He was so poor that it was legal aid counsel that helped him. And so I looked through a copy of the judgment, and on the spot, in that initial review, I saw that there was a 167-day lapse between the close of arguments and the judgment. Now, our Constitution specifically says it has to be within 90 days. Now, the legal aid counsel hadn't even found it. That shows you the quality of representation that he had or lack thereof. So,
and that's something I always say, like, have money. Many of those we see languishing in the prisons without any trial, some are waiting trial. Look at the one that C. King was able to help bring out last time when he was in prison. That was there since 1999 because of generator that was stolen or something. God so bless, of course, with the help of the governor, there is progress, of course, in releasing them. Imagine how many people are there in the prisons and not getting trialed or even not getting justice. But you see people that go there and are being detained or they stay in prison, and because they have money, of course, they can stay comfortably and come out when they have to come out because, of course, they know people, they have money, and some would even be staying in VIP cells, like we have seen in recent investigation with the whole Bobrisky thing and all of that. But you see, poverty itself becomes a systemic problem that when something just comes on you, I think money would have to speak at that point. So what he says here is quite relatable with what we have seen happening in the country. But let's go on.
Mr. Jackson has been failed at every possible level by the system. And
But couldn't you adduce that argument at the Supreme Court?
Well, so here's the thing. So I was initially working with the Legal Aid Council to prepare an appeal. I traveled back to the US. When I came back, his counsel had changed. And so a group that I'm affiliated with had taken over. And I knew the chap with that. So I reached out to him and drew his attention to this fact. And he also had marshaled other facts and, threw them all in. But the sad thing is, despite everything, and the case is so clear because this man retrieved the knife of his attacker. So it wasn't his own knife. But one thing that really stands out to me is, I was talking to my dentist today about this, and a dentist said to me, what happened to the charge of manslaughter? Because at the very worst, if he had to be charged with something, it would be manslaughter. He did not know that chap before that day. He couldn't have premeditated this. And I believe that this is one of those cases that when it was brought by the police to the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, the DPP's advice should have killed this case. This man has no case to answer. And now he's sentenced to death. He's exhausted all legal channels and is awaiting execution.
How did you get involved in this case?
Now, before we let the pastor himself speak, you have to know that even Open Doors is actually watching this closely. Open Doors is an organization I've known for a long time when it comes to, supporting when Christians, of course, are being persecuted and then providing aid as well in that particular regard. And they're watching closely, at least from what I read here in the Nigerian lawyer website, which I think is something we need to note because it also gets to bring an image to Nigeria in a way that it should not be. Do you understand? And I wouldn't say that religious persecutions haven't been going on in Nigeria for a long time, And I will not entirely look at this as a religious thing, because this was just someone's privacy, or would I say land, that was encroached upon. And then from the fact of the case as well, for those who were there and them following it up, that would be a case of self-defense for a fact, because it's not as if I had a weapon and I used that weapon on you. You came into my land, I challenged you, you brought out a knife to fight me, you stabbed me a couple of times, and then still it was still your same weapon from the struggle that I used to. But again as well here, when Fulani herdsmen themselves get to move, most of the time as well, they move with partners. If he was there alone, if you are trying to paint a picture of what happened there, and maybe the person that came in came with other people, they could have still killed him probably, and nobody would know. And now as well that this whole conversation has been coming up with respect to people's organs being harvested and things happening, you don't know what could have happened to him, because I'm going to go to the story of what is happening right now on the southeast as well in Enugu State. So you really understand that we have to make sure we look at this really critically to see if this case itself is even worth the attention it has. Because in my opinion, I think it's worth the attention it has if this person has to go down because of self-defense. Now, I wasn't there, you weren't there, but from the fact of the case itself, if your own weapon that you used to attack me and I also got injured as well because of that is what I used to kill you in the process, when things like that happen, the adrenaline rush, you cannot even know what would happen, because this is a case whereby you are fighting for your life. Now, according to what the courts are saying, which is going to go on to talk about as well here, let me just let him talk, because some of you may have seen this video before, but some of you are seeing it for the first time. Let's go on.
Well, Barrister Emmanuel and I have been working for a number of years here in Nigeria on human rights issues, and this is a sad day, Charles, for human rights in Nigeria. Sunday Jackson, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a human rights advocate. Sunday Jackson, by anyone's estimation, is totally innocent. And the issue where this man was out farming, minding his own business, and then the attacker came and a struggle ensued. And of course, this man is going to defend himself. That's why we call it self-defense. And yet today, we were at the Nigerian Supreme Court, and it was very brief. It was only about maybe 2 minutes long. And we just wept at the failure of the Nigerian Supreme Court to say that this man, and they had the opportunity to say this man was totally innocent. We haven't seen all the ins and outs of the decision, but we had the opportunity to meet this humble farmer, this young man who unfortunately his wife abandoned him, had been on death row for 10 years. So
his wife abandoned him. "10 years is not 10 days.
Sunday Jackson has now become an international case for human rights.
Yes,
and
because
so we're going to continue to advocate.
I was going
for
to
it.
ask you what are the international dimensions of this case?
Well, the international dimensions are Open Doors, which is a human rights organization, has recounted that there have been thousands of killings of Christians by Fulanis. And so as a human rights advocate and as a pastor, I'm here to advocate for this man who is totally innocent. So it has international implications. The eyes of human rights advocates are now on Nigeria. Like, how could this happen? How could this possibly happen? By anyone's estimation, as Barrister said earlier, manslaughter at least, because murder one that he's being convicted of and may face hanging if we can't get clemency for him, it has to be premeditated. So what justice on the Nigerian Supreme Court, that didn't pop up and say to him or her, this is a case of self-defense and this man is totally innocent. So we encourage people to continue to pray for Sunday Jackson and his innocence.
Emmanuel.
Man, what is even I find more concerning is that even though this right now is, we are getting to know about this, because there might be other cases that like this that might be happening in Nigeria in this way, I was thinking by now maybe I would hear, forgive me as well, but some of you will not like me for saying this, hear some of the A-list or key pastors as well, or people that are, significant, of course, in the society, adding attention to this, because most of our churches is where we have people of influence that can also get to see to it that justice is gotten for Sunday, with respect to the fact that this would be a pure case of self-defense. Do you understand? Now, from his name, Sunday Jackson, Sunday, you would, of course, that is a Christian name. But in this case as well, for this pastor himself to be stepping in, it's justified as well that is seen as a human rights issue with respect to his affiliation, of course, to Open Doors. So indeed, of course, it becomes very concerning that I think Christians, of course, can get to add their voice and discuss about this as well on a more larger scale. And yes, of course, the governor of Adamawa State as well is not Christian. I'm not saying that we should look at this purely on a religious side, but at least as well try to understand the facts of the case, because if not, then I would say people that are over there in Adamawa State as well might just have to look at the whole system to be like, okay, no one is here to defend us. If you are even defending ourselves in this process, then indeed we'll still die after all. So what would you now think of? I don't know if you get what I'm saying, because right now it's setting a precedence. This going through all the way to the Supreme Court. When it comes to law itself, it's not just about what is in the Constitution that is also law. Even what the judges themselves gets to co-sign becomes what can be used as a precedent in an future argument or something. So it also says a lot about the system legally.
What was the prosecution's argument? I understand that they urged the court to convict Mr. Jackson solely on his confessional statement and based on the fact that death had occurred. So basically, no mitigating circumstances, and that was pretty much how the judge saw it.
Yes, so part of the problem is they are arguing that he had a responsibility to flee. Now, in the US, we have, stand your ground rules, which means you can defend yourself as much as you want. Now,
the thing is that, Nigeria is not the US. And that's what they will say. And I understand his position as well here. Come on, look at this video.
Is sparking a lot of debate on social media right now, and you'll understand why. A Long Beach, California homeowner says he has no regrets after shooting and killing an unarmed woman who said she was pregnant. This after he got into a confrontation with her and another man who were ransacking his home.
When the time comes to defend yourself, you best do something.
The words of the 80-year-old homeowner who confronted two robbers.
I walked in on them, and they downed me. They jumped on me in the hallway.
But Tom Greer says he managed to get his .22 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver. He says when that unarmed couple saw his gun, they took off out the back door, and he followed.
The lady didn't run fast as a man, so I shot her in the back twice. She's dead, and they told her off, but he got away. She says, "Don't shoot me, I'm pregnant, I have a baby," and I shot her anyway.
And since then, there has been a swift and almost split reaction on social media sites. While some say they would have done exactly the same thing, others say gun owners don't have the right to shoot a robber outside their home.
Investigators have to look at both sides of this coin.
NBC legal analyst Royal Oakes tells us Long Beach detectives have much to consider.
And on the one hand, a frail man in his 80s, he's been attacked in his own home by intruders. He has a right to self-defense. On the other hand, he did shoot a person who was trying to get away, so he wasn't in imminent danger himself, and the law says you can't shoot somebody under those circumstances.
Greer says he has no regrets and has a warning for the alleged partner in crime still wanted tonight.
I shot her, so that's going to leave a message on his mind.
Long Beach police say they are still investigating this. It is not clear whether any charges will be filed against Greer for the shooting.
Now, would I say as well I support the entire system of the US whereby everyone has a rifle or something, because even a mad person can hold a rifle and then just in 1 second end you like that. But in that case as well, like, you went to go and rob someone. You don't go now, you no work, the person pay you. That one as well, you might say, oh, because it's a white man, they will just let him go or something. There are many cases of that as well that happen in the US where people defend themselves against people that are coming to intrude. So I understand where his mindset is coming from. But in Nigeria, I think that was something that this person was working towards.
My senior legislative aide was kidnapped and killed in November. I was told the circumstances in which the kidnappers went from house to house in his estate in Galadimawa, part of Abuja. And let me tell you, if some of those guys, and they are very reasonable guys, my SLA was a lawyer for over 10 years. You know, if a guy like him had a gun, a licensed gun, he wouldn't have been picked like a chicken the way he was picked. If he had a gun, or people in his streets had guns, but they didn't. And the only thing that those kidnappers had were just guns. There were a few of them, they had guns. And you've seen many public transports on our highways stopped and everybody told to come down, and they're led into the bush. And some of them you never hear from them again, simply because nobody amongst them had a gun. And the story is the same all over in Nigeria. What my bill seeks to do is to give the opportunity to those who want to have guns to have them. And those, it's not just because you have a license doesn't mean that you must have a gun. You know, there are many, many people who have licenses to drive cars that don't have cars. I'm sure you know that. And this compares with what is happening in America. In America, the law allows everybody to bear arms. Everybody. When I say everybody, those who are Americans, it's a basic fundamental right. That's not what I'm talking about here. Here, I am saying that there are stages that you must go through to be able to qualify to bear arms. One of them is that you must go through a shooting range school. You must be trained on how to handle guns. And that school should be able to give you some certificate that you've gone through such a training program. And that school should be, or my proposal is that there should be one of such schools in every senatorial district, and they should be owned and run by retired military guys who are familiar with guns. And so by the time you leave that place now able to use a gun, you go to your traditional ruler who will write to confirm that they know you and that you are a person of good character. Because whether you like it or not, every character in our society is known by the local kings. And if the kings don't know, their chiefs know. You know, there's a council of chiefs for every community. So, and they know those families where people are known as rogues. They're known as thieves. They're known as the history of every family is known to the traditional rulers. And so for me, that is a very important vetting.
Yeah.
And then from there, you must get 2 reports from medical doctors, 2 medical doctors that will confirm that you are of sound mind. And those doctors must be your doctors, not just, you can't just go to any odd doctor and get some certification. They must be doctors who have known you for at least 2 years. That's a condition. Then from there, you go to the local government chairman who will also certify that they know you, that you are from that local government. Then lastly, you go to the commissioner of police and the director, DSS in the state to get your final confirmations. And with this now, you go back to the shooting range school who should be the people selling those guns. Because as I said, they will be licensed. There's special license. Because if you go to America or even UK, you have shops that sell guns.
Supermarkets.
They sell them everywhere. Easily. So what I'm saying that those retired military guys should also be licensed to sell guns.
But here's the issue, Senator. In the ownership of firearm in Nigeria, there are those who believe that there is already proliferation of firearms.
I know what you're talking about.
Illegal
Seun, let me tell you.
carriage.
So what do you suggest in the alternative? Do you look? The military are overstretched and they are under-equipped. The police are insufficient in all ramifications. When you look at the number of policemen that we have, we need about no less than 400,000 new recruits immediately.
We only have about 350,000 policemen.
And that is nothing for a population of over 200 million people.
We have the money to be able to employ more police officers and pay them.
Yes, so if you don't have the money, Seun, then allow people to defend themselves. It's as simple as that.
Look at the statistics.
If you are speaking for the government and you say the government doesn't have the money to recruit more policemen, and there are many people who want to be recruited, then allow people to defend themselves.
Was trying to work towards the whole legalization of firearms or something for people to defend themselves. And he saw that particular case of the EFCC. That the EFCC went to someone's home over there in, I think it was, I don't know which state, I think it was Anambra, I'm forgotten. Oka, I think it's somewhere in Oka. When they were doing their raid, the man just used his rifle, and then one USCC member was down. Now, I don't know how that particular case is going, because it's not as if there was an exchange of fire or something, but at least indeed from the news of what was said allegedly as well, that they kind of like came into his space. And because of what happens in Nigeria right now with the whole kidnapping and all of that, you don't know who is who. Even though the EFCC were trying to say that there was CCTV camera that he could use as well to know who the persons that are intruding are. But again, as well, were those people themselves wearing their uniforms to show that they were EFCC, even though as well, even that with that as well, at that particular night hour was quite questionable. So the person himself releasing fire to protect himself at that particular point, someone had to go down. I don't know if you understand. Now, I don't know how that particular case has gone with EFCC as well, and then dealing with the person that took down one of their members or something. But you see that self-defense as well does happen. As I'm speaking to you as well, I have been, my own biological mother years ago as well was kidnapped in my very presence. They came from the point as well my dad was, where we stay, and how it happened as well was quite interesting. I don't know if I think I've shared this story before. Okay, let me not share the story, I will say, but my own biological mother has been kidnapped before and stayed with kidnappers for like a week. So imagine someone that has been through that particular experience. If you come, if something of that similitude is happening next time, man, maybe someone might go down. I don't know if you understand. Because now, of course, because of that, of course, security became more conscious and then revamped. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So indeed, it's quite concerning. But let's go on.
Now, here they're arguing that instead of fight, you should have flight. You should flee.
In other words, after he overpowered the man and retrieved the knife, there was no further need to stab him.
Yes, but that is not accurate, and I don't think that's a fair requirement to make to someone who is facing imminent death. Now, just the data alone of all the massacres that have occurred, he couldn't have known if there were more headsmen on their way to kill him.
Exactly.
He has seen reports of what these people do. This guy just stabbed him. And so to expect him to reasonably assume that to fulfill the conditions of the law he needed to flee made no sense.
Yeah, but nevertheless, do remember that a lot of Nigerian law is based on English common law. And if you attack, if you go into somebody's house to rob the person, I think it's different in America. It's that standard ground thing. You can actually shoot the person. If you did that in the UK, you'd be charged with murder.
Well, yeah, but here's the issue. The issue is that the attacker brought the knife, he overpowered him and took the knife after he sustained injuries. And this is why I have a problem. The evidence shows that he was injured in the leg. And then you say that he should have run. So he was at that moment momentarily incapacitated to even be able to run. I mean, the facts are not in doubt. This man did not die that this attacker died as a result of the attack. But the circumstances was he attacked me, I was in fear for my life, and I fought back.
Were there any witnesses?
There were no witnesses. But, I mean, even the prosecution admitted that the weapon belonged to the attacker. The evidence, he had scars on his body of the injuries he sustained.
Right. Okay, let me ask you, William.
Yeah. Now, there's the possibility of also looking at the fact that what if he comes? Because no witnesses. What if he came and saw someone on his land, you know, with the cattle or something, and then he challenged a person, and then from there was a fight or something, even though the person that brought out the knife would have brought out the knife with the intent of, you know, killing him, and then he overpowered the person, because it will now look as if that the story is now looking like he was farming and then this person came, and then either way there was a challenge. Do you understand? Because for there to even be that challenge as well, it will come from someone that wants to defend his own right and his own location, his own property. You don't have to come here. I don't know if you understand. So with there being no witnesses, there are different angles as well to look at it. But for him to have an injury as well in the leg as well, or something that came from the person that is the intruder, then it becomes very questionable. If it was his own weapon that he used or something, because let's say he was going to the farm, he will not be going to that farm as well with the intent that he was going to go and kill someone or something or whatever. So probably as well here, the person actually came and attacked him, and with him without the intent of killing the person, and being in a struggle overpowered him, and then was able to do what he had to do, because of course, like he said, you don't know how many more there are, because normally they get to move in groups. Does it make sense? So there are different facets as well to look at this, but indeed self-defense becomes really, really important as well in this whole conversation.
Are you now in the process of trying to reach out to political leaders in Adamawa State in order to seek clemency? Because that's the only option, really.
That's the only option. We are bringing out every possible person, method, ability to be able to grant clemency to Mr. Sunday Jackson, who was totally innocent. And so, yes, we are on a fast track to alert people that here's a man that you can stand up for from a human rights perspective. Be a hero today in Nigeria on the issue of human rights, and stand up for this nobody, Sunday Jackson, that's totally innocent in spite of what the Nigerian Supreme Court said today. So yeah, we're initiating, and we're going full force on that.
And how much time has he actually got now?
Well, we're not sure what the timeline is now. Right. And just to illustrate the level of disappointment, we had someone on standby to pick him up from prison today. Yeah. And I couldn't make the call to say he's not going home, he's going to be killed. His children are ill. We've had to take care of them. His wife abandoned him. And so even in this time, he's not surrounded by his family, and we're going to put him to death. But I do want to make a quick point here about we're standing up not just for him, but for all of us. The Fulani militia have killed thousands of Christians. They've killed Muslims as well. And many of them are foreigners. So we have a situation where foreigners come and kill Nigerians with impunity, and Nigerians can't defend themselves. Yeah. In the Northwest right now, Lakawura is a Fulani terrorist group that was invited to come and help stop the terrorism of Boko Haram and bandits. And they're now killing the people they came in to protect. Right. So Nigeria is under siege. And there are more Nigerian citizens on death row in Nigeria now for defending themselves against Fulani herdsmen than there are Fulani herdsmen in Nigerian prisons in death row. That's just wrong. That's unacceptable.
Upside down.
So no idea how much time he's actually got.
No.
Because I mean, there must be a period that allows for the clemency process to
well, the court did not issue their opinion today, and they said not till next week. Right. So we're on a fast track.
So they just made an announcement.
Correct.
Right.
They just made the announcement. It took 2 minutes.
Right.
They had 30 judgments to deliver today, so they said they couldn't read everything, and they'll just give the conclusions. So all we had was dismissed.
Right.
And we won't know till next week. But I will contrast this with the death row case in Indonesia that we won.
Well, I'm going to come to that in a minute because we're fast running out of time. But I mean, he's been in prison for 10 years.
Yes.
What must his mental state be?
Well, we saw February 19th, 2021. We went to Yola and we actually had access to visit with him and to pray for him. So here's a man that has lost everything simply because he was trying to defend himself and defend his family and defend his farm. As Barrister said, how did Sunday Jackson know that there may be 20 other Fulanis that are coming right behind this gentleman who attacked him? So his mental state, you can imagine being in prison for 10 years, losing your family, losing your children, losing your wife. I mean, the man is crushed and depressed, and that's why we are going to continue to advocate for the innocence of Sunday Jackson.
And Emmanuel, you were talking about Indonesia.
Yes.
I mean, you've done a lot of cases across the world. Tell us about that case in Indonesia where you got a Nigerian off death row and how that contrasts with what happened here in Nigeria.
Yes, so that was a fascinating case. It's definitely one of the most complex cases I've had to deal with. And the gentleman was convicted under the identity of Emmanuel Ihejirika, which wasn't his real name. The passport wasn't his own passport. So he ended up, by mistaken identity, getting a death sentence for crimes that he did not commit. And we had to prove that he was not a Sierra Leonean, but a Nigerian. And we couldn't get the data from the NIS. And so
that's the
Nigerian Immigration Services.
Yes.
So we had to conduct a DNA test on his brother from Ebonyi State here in Abuja. And then we had to do a DNA test on him in prison to establish. This is one of the most bizarre cases ever. We had teams of lawyers working in Indonesia, Australia, Pakistan, and Malaysia, and then myself in the US. And very fortunately for us, the Indonesian Supreme Court granted him a reprieve. And he came home after 20 years from a country that is, you know, the biggest Muslim country in the world. There's a bit of racism in that country, and you know, Nigerians have a terrible reputation. But the Supreme Court set a poor Nigerian free, and he came back maybe about a year ago to Nigeria.
Yes.
The work that Sonny Akoni, the counsel on this case, did was fascinating. He's won death row cases before, but this was a big shocker to us. And about the timeline, quickly, I was going to say, in Indonesia, we came into the case after he had exhausted everything. He was awaiting execution. But the Indonesian ambassador told me here in Abuja, he said, listen, 27 days to his conviction, you have a right, to his execution, you have a right to file an additional appeal. So we went around the world and we gathered our data. We had huge briefs. When he was told he was going to be executed, we submitted our appeal. And a couple of years later, you know, the court said, you know, we're going to overturn his death sentence. So in our case in Nigeria, we don't know the clock we're working with, but definitely time is of the essence to get him free.
But on a final word, he now essentially is in a race for his life.
He is in a race for his life. And this Indonesian case was a great day of celebration because we brought that gentleman home and landed here in Abuja on Christmas Day of all things. So we're going to be with Sunday Jackson until the final lap of this, and we are hoping to God that our prayers will be answered, and we ask others to pray, Charles, and thank you for bringing attention to Sunday Jackson, this innocent man.
Wow. That was indeed the best I can do as well is just talk about it and then bring more attention to it. And it's just crazy what is happening. Come on, look at this video of what this was 10 months ago in Enugu. Look at this video.
I came here to assure you of the security guarantee, not only here but the state generally. I was attracted by this killing. I was not really too happy. Yes, the Excellency too was not happy. Authority, police authority were now happy. I came here to congratulate with all of you. You can see all of us here, our men and our management team. But our men have entered the bush to ensure that this criminal element that did this bastard act will be brought to book. we can never spare, we can never tolerate this kind of unwholesome and unwarranted killing of individuals. Because I can see without this, you want to create a kind of a psychological, demobilize you psychologically, so you can't go to your farm. You must go to your farm. I have to be here with you. I just want you to give me, supply the police with information, because we cannot do independent on our own. The information is highly needed as you go to the farm, as you are doing your farming. Any of these acts, I will value all my everybody phones. As if you call to attention, prompt response to arrest this situation. It can never, will never, as long as I stay here, will never happen again in this place. Yes. Amen. Want you to go to your lawful businesses and do your civil responsibilities, because all you two have is only to farm. Nobody can really take you away from your farming. I can assure you security guarantee. This corporate cannot go unpunished. We must figure it out. That is why I have to leave my place and show. And even before I came here, I have to mobilize outside the bush. I will be here in this place until we get those criminal elements. They can never happen in this place and go free. So very unfortunate.
Thank you.
Yes.
We are very happy the Commissioner of Police is here in person to console us. His presence and his men here gave us courage now. And we are now going to sensitize our people, mobilize them to go back to farm. That now government has stepped in via the police. So we thank you very much, and may God continue to lead you.
You heard the police, of course, saying, oh, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do that. 10 months after, these are the women, of course, themselves protesting. What has happened? What has changed?
Problem I when he have for Bondi Fulani. Kambe Aaron Nokita, can the Fulani be the remake by Yono? Aye Bundi Hamufu, Ndetiri Wemar, Etiri Mary Hamufu, Yamanabia, Nali Boga, Maheba, Libo, Hamufu, Aina Seke, Hamufu, Ndabaki Hamufu, Gajan to study in Hamufu, Mata, Ndi Hamufu, they just about the Gajan to study. Because of the Fulani, I am not a the Fulani, who are better Obodani. There's a Jida, Abunadi, Obodani, Obodo, Idina Sa, where Chupundi Madu, Eba Inwe, Abunad Obono, where Unku, wherever in Akoubo, wherever in Ulakuko, wherever in Ulagu, Nimagu Bani, Eba Ibi, the last one in the candy, none of her. All of a sudden, on the Fulani way better, where be the Bundi Bang, a Kakan Bekaina Guano, Nahanebu, or Tumba Guama 20, or Tumba Mahabo 30, or Tumba Better Madara, or Tumba Better Mother, and what her Fulani Begani. I know Tim Pukambe, now government of Enugu State, government of Nigeria, government of Eastern local government, typical Sinyaranyaka, Makana Aquanoa. Abuna ya watu mwa inila neba ndabu ndo metisere. Omer muza adura ni hamfu tata. Makani ya imere noza adura abuna. Undi hamfu se abuna haka bundo boda. Si meka hamara na ha bundo boda. Government ge hanti. Abuna ha bundo boda tibiko government biko ge hanti. Ke when we can napta no no da. Oga no abo goru ugbo. ndị a niile n'ebe a bụ ndị si n'ebe ha bi wee kwafu wee lọta na-abịa nọ n'ebe mmadụ agụ a na-egbu ndị be anyị ụmụ okorobịa anyị egburu egbu dị uncountable then ndị nọ n'ụlọ mkpọrọ kịta bụ uncountable ọ bụrụ na ngwere ka nwa okorobịa si megide dị ha mfụ ejide eje tinye na prison biko nụ gọọmenti of Enugu steeti gọọmenti of Nigeria biko si nyere anyị aka na ihe amụfụsi biko anyị na ya biko si nyere anyị aka abịakwa anyị na-akwara unu nyere unu obi kịta anyị ebidogo ọtụtụ mmadụ bụ ndị nwụrụ na-abụrụ ndị Fulani gburu mara ndị Fulani gburu ihe Fulani ji gbu ndị a bụ na ha natara ego na gọọmenti jee kọọ rice den ndị Fulani kpọrọ efi kpobe na ugbo rice ha wee taa ya onye ahụ cheche echiche ka ọ ga-esi kwuo egwu gọọmenti ụgwọ ọ natara bank onye ahụ nwụọ ọrụ onwe biko nụ lenu na-enyi lenu na ya amụfụ lenu na ndị
What has changed? Man, the government really need to step up. But when you say government, it's still human beings that are there. When we say police, it's still human beings that are there, the police. They have families themselves. They have people to take care of. But if people themselves want to stand up and defend themselves, and then they have to be sentenced this way, it just makes me now wonder what is really happening if the resistance that are being initiated, in many other states by people who are coming out as either vigilantes or having a particular name, like those who say like Biafrans or something, even though they're more like protecting the interests of their states, but ensuring that these things as well don't happen in the bushes, or what I say, people should be able to go to their farms and do what they have to do. This is where it leads to, whereby even the security system apparatus available are not being effective or something. But I think better things can be done. Man, I'm short of words. See you in my next video.